And it's, hey, how'd you sleep? How'd your sleep compare to my sleep and your HRV, and just a couple things, but it's measuring so much more, but I'm not going to look through everything. And so now, not to be the hypocrite here, but we're adding even more to it because we're looking at 21 different markers on your movement. And now we're going to bring in all the wearables. So we're going to synthesize all that, and based on the AI, give you 3 recommendations of what to do with that.
Today's guest is Andrew Menter, CEO of Physmodo, a health tech company using AI and computer vision to make movement health more accessible and actionable. He has a background in healthcare strategy. Andrew has led Physmodo to partner with elite sport teams, workplace wellness leaders, and healthcare providers, bringing movement screening tools once reserved for top-tier clinics to the broader public. He's a frequent speaker on digital health, AI innovation, and startup leadership, and brings a mission-driven perspective to every conversation. Please welcome Andrew to our show.
How are you?
I'm great. I do a fair amount of podcasts. I'm really excited about this one. Really excited.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't know if you guys expect to learn anything from me, but it's going to be the other way around for sure, whether it's in the next hour or at some point. This is...
We learn so much from this podcast. Our guests just keep blowing our minds in the different ways that people use AI, so it's incredible. But yeah, we're excited to have you.
Yeah, we are.
I'm really excited. I'm not sure if you guys have. I would listen to one of the podcasts and just to get a feel for it. But this topic related to what we're doing, it's not there yet. But we're gonna get there fast. So looking forward to the discussion.
So we were looking at some of your website, obviously, and some of the things that you're into. So I have some background in healthcare. I used to work for a hospital doing marketing for them, and big proponent of things like physical therapy and managing those things. So it kind of circles into the metrics of motion, which your website talks about in what is it, Physmodo? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, correct.
Okay, fantastic. So tell us more about your company and how it came to be, and then what brought you into this sphere and why AI is so pivotal to measuring movement for humans.
So I had a movement assessment in 2014. And it was with a trainer, and they did about 6 or 7 movements. Can you rotate this far? Can you touch your toes? Can you do a bunch of things I couldn't do? And I'm broken, physically speaking, I should clarify. Left Achilles tear, ruptured bicep tendon, slap tear, meniscus tear, all on the left side. I'm very asymmetric, which is the number 2 cause of injury behind previous injury, which we can't do anything about unless we don't ever have one, but that's not realistic. And so I thought the movement screen was great. It identified my primary issues, and I got a program 4 to 6 weeks, whatever it may be, to try and work on my movement. And my goal was to get better, but I wanted to get my score to see if I'd improved. The problem was the screen required someone to be there. It took 15 minutes. No one has that time. My attention span's like 14 seconds. So I said, well, what if we can create a movement screen that can get pretty much all this information, and you can self-assess, and it's quick, and therefore it's repeatable. And I felt that if we can get that, we can identify some issues. For example, if you have poor hip mobility, your back may feel fine today, but it won't pretty damn soon. So similar to, we look at other markers unrelated to movement. So your HbA1c, you don't want that above 6, right? So if it is, or close to it, okay, you're moving towards diabetes. Let's make some changes. There's a lot, and so we want to do that on the movement side. I don't think people realize musculoskeletal spend exceeds metabolic spend. So we're doing a lot of, we're measuring a lot. I mean, let's take the lipid panel, which I have issues with, but nonetheless, that's standard of care for looking at preventing cardiovascular disease. So we do all these things for cardiovascular disease and obesity and diabetes, but what the hell are we doing for what costs the most? Now, an Achilles tear is bad. It doesn't compare remotely to some of the things on, the cardiovascular side and cancer. I get it. But if we're looking at pure spend, it's 5.7% of GDP on musculoskeletal. And a lot of it is preventable.
I'm curious about your story then. What was it, a car accident or some other trauma that injured you in such a way that really focused you in this area?
No, I mean, I think it was just accrual of beating my body up with sports. So I played tennis at college, and I just think beating myself up on hard courts just put a lot of stress on my body. So that was the start of it for about 10 years. Then I moved to rugby, which strangely was the sport where I got the least amount of injuries. It's fun. You want to reduce concussions in football? Take the helmets off.
Yeah.
People don't lead with their heads in rugby when you don't have a helmet. So, but that was, that still beat the body up a bit. And I moved from that to doing Ironmans and CrossFit. So I think the combination of all of that in my body at some point said, you can't do much on an Achilles tear.
You obviously led a very active life, and done a lot of interesting things. We have a brother, we're brothers, and we have a brother who, he played football and soccer and a couple of other sports in high school. Yeah, so he's had a lot of shoulder issues and things of that nature, which has reduced his mobility and ability to exercise in general.
Well, that's funny you should mention that there's 12% of soldiers that are not deployable for non-combat related injuries. And over 75% of that is preventable. So you have these, so we have a contract with the special forces, and you think, oh, these guys are, in the best shape and their scores are going to be excellent. And it's just the reverse, because their bodies are just completely beat up. And so you have these people that can run fast, do their push-ups and sit-up test and run 2 miles quicker than anybody else, but their bodies are broken. And so that's costing a lot of money when you have these kids that, they're supposed to be out in the field and they can't do what they need to. So yeah, there's a lot preventable. If you get hit in the shoulder, something's going to happen by a helmet. If you take a fall because my mom was not paying attention on the phone and taking some steps and fell, so she messed up her ankle. Not preventable. I mean, it is preventable. Pay attention, but it's not because there was a ankle asymmetry or something like that. So, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious how you brought AI into this to measure and manage. I mean, you obviously are appreciative of the assessments, and how did you bring those two areas together?
Well, there is a lot of research about, for instance, if you have bad hip mobility and bad hamstring flexibility, you're going to have a back injury. You will have it. I mean, you're that's why a lot of times people will have a back surgery and yet it's not effective, because you're not fixing the root of the problem. And so there is data out there that speaks to some markers that could lead to problems, but you can't manage movement if you can't measure it.
That's funny, because I've been staring at this quote here on your site. That's the exact one that you just said, and I was going to bring it up. So my question for you, though, is what does that management look like? Like, you measure, and what's cool about your tool, you mentioned, it's a time-intensive process to have your movement measured manually. Now with tech, you can do it a lot faster. But are there recommendations given as well to, like, ward off injury? Is that kind of the point?
Exactly. So, it doesn't help if you have an indicator and nothing to do about it. So we'll give corrective protocols to try and address that hip mobility. And a lot really stems, from ankle mobility, which affects the entire kinetic chain. So yeah, we'll give corrective protocols to try and improve the movement. And again, it's quick. We pick the overhead squat because it's an assessment that is used in every single movement screen, and we'll get about 75-80% of the data that you really want from a movement assessment. And you have to balance, all right, do we want to do multiple assessments and get everything? Or do we want people actually doing their screen and spending less than a minute on a more frequent basis? You can't. So just think of this. If you measured sleep once every 3 months or 6 months, that data is irrelevant because there's too many variables that will go into your sleep. So that's why people can use wearables, which is really where I want to get to. And they wake up and they understand their sleep and their HRV and their O2 saturation, things like that. So if you measured movement once every 3 months or 6 months, again, irrelevant. Were you in a car for 4 hours? Were you on a plane? Did you have a heavy workout the day before? So you really need 3 to 5 screens to get a baseline. And now we can look at your baseline. And so you walk into a gym, you go see your chiropractor, and your hip mobility or whatever, and I'm sticking with that for some reason, I'll mix it up at some point, is down 10 or 15%. We're not diagnosing anything. We're just giving the data for the practitioner, trainer, physio, et cetera, to do something with. Now, we are providing automated AI-generated corrective protocols because we now know what's effective for hip mobility, shoulder, knee, etc. And again, asymmetry, which again is critical. It's the second leading cause of injury.
So if I can ask, when we've played with AI and we've talked about health issues in the past, one of the interesting things that happens is the data, and the combination of the data and the artificial intelligence can surface findings or results, I guess, that that a human wouldn't necessarily think of. And so I'm kind of curious, what have you learned that you didn't expect that kind of surfaced from the data combined with the AI?
So if you have a manual screen, you don't necessarily, it's very difficult to notice the asymmetry. And it's also fairly subjective. So we're able to say, okay, you're 15% off on this side. And it's maybe at 15%, you can notice the asymmetry, but we can notice it within 2 to 3%.
So it's more precise.
I think it's way more precise. And I think it's important to underscore that biomarker or any kind of marker in any part of health, there is research at what works, but you need to understand that biomarker. So again, kind of coming back to, okay, let's go to cholesterol, which I don't necessarily agree with the way they do a lipid panel, but for the most part, I think doctors will say, okay, if you're over 200 total, that's not good. So someone comes in with 300, probably need to look a little deeper and see what's going on. Well, just imagine you just took basically you're looking at the person and kind of guessing, yeah, you're probably around 250, 225 or 170. You can't know what to do if you don't know what the number is. And that's why, and I stole that from a sports scientist at TRX that we used to work with quite a bit, Chris Frankel, who said, you can't manage movement if you can't measure. Same with anything else. It just hasn't been measured. And that's what we've done. But I think more importantly is what we're doing now, or we're developing now, which is going to be released in September. And that is pulling in all the wearable data. So again, I've said if you have everything we're looking at to try and prevent metabolic, and yet musculoskeletal is a greater spend, you're not looking at the full picture of health. You don't have this movement health index, so to speak. And you need to look at musculoskeletal. Well, same on our side. If you're only looking at musculoskeletal, you're not getting your true health or even close. So what if you can do both? And we're working with a company called Rook that is able to, any app can pull in all wearable data. And there's something like 300 wearables. I think the only one they don't have is I think Dexcom on the glucose monitoring. And that becomes very, very interesting because, for instance, there is data that there is, and it's not a correlation, it's a causation with bad flexibility will lead to bad sleep. So again, the data is out there. The research has been done a lot. So now we can actually look at that data. Okay, your hamstring flexibility was this and your sleep was good. Okay, it dropped 10%. What does that do to your sleep? What does that do to your HRV and your stress? We're now also pulling in your physical activity. How is that affecting your movement the next day? And then what is that doing?
Do you consider your application to be part of kind of the quantified health movement? Because I've worked with people in the past who, I know that there are people who track like every little thing, their macro and micronutrients, every calorie that's eaten, every exercise, every calorie that's expended through exercise, sleep, just a whole wide variety of metrics. Is this kind of, do you consider yourself part of that movement or not really?
Yeah, you have to. I was at a conference a couple weeks ago just talking about overall health and looking at, fitness, sleep, and nutrition. And this was a lot on fitness, so I'm going a little off track here, but it's super like fitness is critical because if you have a great night's sleep, you also need to work on your nutrition. That doesn't necessarily motivate you to eat well, but if you're working out more, you're probably not going to want to waste that workout and go have an ice cream sundae. Why I mentioned that, or maybe you do, maybe you do. I don't know.
Guilty.
Okay, bad example for you maybe, but the reason. So what I am seeing is the convergence of fitness and health. So we've primarily been in the fitness space, but you're having, you have high-end gyms like an Equinox or a Lifetime that are adding health clinics, but you're also seeing what are considered HVLP, high-value, low-price gyms that, those will be like $10, $20, $30, something like that. You have a group called Fitness Connection. It's fantastic gym, and they have 46 locations, 350,000 members, and they're adding wellness optimization because they want retention too. And health and fitness are not mutually exclusive anymore. I don't think they ever were, but I think that's being recognized. So we have to pull in as much information as possible, and that's why we're going down the wearable route.
I have a follow-up on that, which is obviously, I mean, I 100% agree. You can't measure, you can't manage, right? And so to manage better, you've got to be measuring. But what about data overload? Like I have an Apple Watch and I scroll through the health app and I track, 2 or 3 things currently. But when I think about AI, part of the promise is that it makes our lives easier. And so I'm just kind of curious. Yes, I agree. I think an AI does better with all of the data. And so kind of what are you doing to make it kind of more human centric?
Yeah, it's funny. You mentioned Apple and you just track a few things. I'm sure one of the things you don't track is they look at your gait. And
no, I'm not looking at that. Tell me more.
Well, I mean, I think what I like about that is they're recognizing that, some of your movement is important because
I'm gonna look at my gait right now,
and your susceptibility to fall risk, which is a huge problem, and so, but yeah, I've used a couple wearables that give me a lot of stuff, and I think in just anecdotally, when we're in this, the community boards in these apps, and it's, hey, how'd you sleep? How'd your sleep compare to my sleep and your HRV, and just a couple things, but it's measuring so much more, but I'm not going to look through everything. And so now, not to be the hypocrite here, but we're adding even more to it because we're looking at 21 different markers on your movement. And now we're going to bring in all the wearables. So we're going to synthesize all that, and based on the AI, give you 3 recommendations of what to do with that. So yeah, if you want to manage if your stress is high, if your sleep is bad, whatever it may be. So maybe it's as simple as, all right, you need to do these couple stretches before you go to sleep. Yeah, we know what we need to do. Get up in the morning and get your circadian rhythm, see light. Don't drink coffee after a certain time. Don't look at your screens. But you ever thought about the fact that, yeah, you're tight and that's what's affecting your sleep? So look, we want to sleep better. We want to be less stressed. There's some basic stuff. Yeah, your gait analysis, I guess it's interesting. There's a lot of stuff that's interesting. I got a dog, and now I'm walking 5,000 steps more a day than last year. Well, great. Who really cares? Good for me. There's so much data in there. I mentioned oxygen saturation earlier. That's great. But who cares? If I have COVID and I want to pay attention and make sure it doesn't go below 90, good. But do I need that regularly? No, I want to sleep better and be less stressed. And I want to move better. So how does that all work? And I'm going to give you some insights every single day and learn what works for you and just generally. So yeah, that's what we're trying to, even right now. It's, when we're onboarding with the client, they're like, man, you give us so much information. What are we supposed to do with this? And it's the same thing. So we work with a client that does, we work with Stretch Lab. We're in every single Stretch Lab. And we're only doing this one movement, which, is unusual. A lot of the companies do great screens. They just do multiple movements. But we get the question, man, that's a lot of data just from your overhead squat. What are we supposed to do with that? So we're providing them, okay, here are the 3 things to concentrate on with your client. So yeah, now we're just adding way more data, and same thing. Here are the 3 things that you must focus on in order to improve your life.
I'm curious about you talk about the mountain loads of data that you're getting, and have you noticed any patterns or things that past past healthcare providers would say, oh, this is the key thing that you need to focus on, but those things are I imagine shifting. What has been that shift for you?
It's interesting to see how the smallest bit of asymmetry is causing injuries, just because favoring one side or the other is a problem. It's crazy when even just I fly a lot, and when I put my right leg over my left knee, it's so inflexible. So I go the other way around and I just do the left over the right because that's more comfortable. Now I'm just exacerbating the injury, and I'm favoring the one side. So the more and more asymmetric people become,
So you mentioned earlier
the
being
worse
able
they're
to
out there.
measure. Yeah, you mentioned earlier being able to measure 2, 3% asymmetry. Is there a percentage at which it becomes problematic, or is it any percentage that's problematic?
Yeah, I think, well, if you're just in the, 2, 3%, that's fine, but we're seeing materially more. And so when I tore my Achilles, is interesting from a recovery standpoint. I knew what my numbers were pre-injury, and I started to feel better. But when I measured, I was still 12% less flexibility on my left side with my ankle than my right. So I still need, and so I needed to get that right, like kind of right within a couple percent of where it was originally, in order to, resume the activities I was doing pre-injury. So it, you know, I hear a lot, man, I'm just not a flexible person. Oh, I can barely touch my toes or this and that. Well, no, I don't see a lot of people talking about their asymmetry, but how, You can kind of feel if your hamstrings are tighter, you can't touch your toes, or, your shoulder's sore, but it's it's not as important as your symmetry. We'll see people that have terrible mobility and great symmetry. And so, that's it's almost better than the other way around. You'll see the yoga people have unbelievable mobility, but their stability is terrible. So that's not good either. Yeah. So you need good mobility, you need good stability, and you need good symmetry. And it's tough to get all of them.
It's fascinating. I mean, I had never considered asymmetry to be a problem, but I mean, we go to a chiropractor every so often, and they'll look at your shoulders, and if one's a little lower than the other, he's like, "Oh, you're off," that kind of thing. And so that really is keying in to a lot of my own movements that I'm thinking about, because I'm trying to get to a certain weight. And then after that, I was like, okay, now after that, my goal is to be able to touch my toes better, to be able to put my hands flat on the ground, to bend over and put my head flat on the ground. That's my next goal once I get to the weight that I want to get to. So I'm going to have to figure that out. And I think your tools will help me do that better.
Yeah. So that's I'm sure your chiropractor is great, and it's not unusual to do exactly what he's doing or she's doing. But wouldn't it be interesting if you knew what percentage you're like leaning on your left or your right side, and how that's improved? So you're probably, I don't know if you're getting something done at the clinic and then you're getting homework, so to speak, to try and improve that. But it'd be nice to come in and would say, "Oh, okay, yeah, you look a little better today. Well, maybe you're 6% off last time and now it's straight. Good." Now that's just posture, I think, which we do measure, but I don't find that as important. We're not seeing that as important as the other few things we're measuring, but
yeah. And I mention it because over the weekend I was walking into a grocery store, and as I was walking in, I saw my reflection on the double doors there, and noticed that my right shoulder was just a tad lower than my left when I was standing there. And so I was like, I'm out. I should probably go see the chiropractor and get that straightened out. But a lot of the things that you're saying is also, what does that asymmetry look like for me? And is it going to cause me injury? And you've said a lot of things that I'm like, when you say you cross your legs, I'm like, yeah, I do. I favor my left side over my right side because I have a hip injury that I, sometimes gets a little aggravated, and I'm not as flexible there anymore.
Yeah. And I think what's important is, so I'll give you an example. Are you familiar with the massage guns like Therabody and Hyperice?
Vaguely,
Nice.
only vaguely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the percussion devices, and it's a nice massage. So my shoulders are really, I'm poor mobility on my shoulders, and I got one of those someone to work on my shoulders for about 5 minutes. It felt so much better. And then I rescreened. My shoulder scores ramped up big time. And I'm sure when you leave your chiropractor, you feel better, whatever's done to you. Now, I came back the next morning and my shoulders were back at exactly the same spot, because you really need 4 to 6 weeks of doing your corrective exercises to kind of groove those neurological patterns to make changes. So maybe this is a little far-fetched as an example, but I mean, I don't go to the dentist every 6 months like I should, but let's just, for purposes, assume I did. That's great, and it's more effective than brushing my teeth. But if I didn't brush my teeth in between and do the work myself, that's not going to be good for my next visit. So if you go to your chiropractor and then do nothing else, and you go back 6 weeks later, nothing's going to change.
It would be good if he offered, some form of prevention in the between visits.
Yeah, well, I mean, offline, just, I can, set your chiropractor up with one of our systems and get you measured on a regular basis. So, and what's important then, I guess, on that is what we've seen is, okay, you can get, let's say a chiropractor wanted to give you 3 things to do when you're not there. And it's typically been, here's a sheet with some exercises, or I'm gonna give you a link to a YouTube video. And that's why it's important on our side to have the in-studio, in-facility, and clinic app with that screen. And then also on the consumer side, for then you to be able to communicate with your chiropractor. And if you're doing screens when you're not at the clinic, for him to see, oh, okay, I see your movement's changing. Let me alter your program a little bit, or whatever it may be. So you have to reach somebody at the gym, at the clinic, at wherever, and at home, because, again, just doing your visit every 4 to 6 weeks without doing anything in between and no communication is not a good thing.
So let me ask a follow-up. So earlier I said, how do you solve the problem of data overload? Then there's the problem of time. You've hinted at that this takes a lot less time than a regular manual screening, but how long does it take to assess your mobility with your app?
So you put your hands over your head and squat 3 times.
And that's it.
Mm-hmm.
A
So
minute or less.
yeah, that's 30 seconds. So when we went to a fitness conference, the first one we went to, big fitness conference with TRX, which if you know, like the black and yellow straps that they're a fitness brand of the year. They've done a nice job. We partnered with them, and we went to the first big fitness conference. This was, I think, in 2017. And I saw another company that was doing movement assessments. They were new, these 6X Google engineers, and it's scared the hell out of me. I'm like, these guys are way smarter than I am and our team is. But they were trying to do too much, and they got about maybe 10 or 15 people in those couple days through their screen. People just don't want to spend all that time kind of going back to my original assessment. We got almost 1,000 screens in 2 days. Yeah. Now we did have multiple, it's on an iPad, multiple units of doing the screens, but still, and we had people coming back the next day because now all of a sudden it gets competitive.
Yeah, they want to see what their results are from day to day.
Yeah. But still, getting people to do 30 seconds isn't as simple as one would think. It's not as simple as that wearable when you can wake up and do nothing and you have all the information, or even though you're not tracking it, you are walking and you're not having to do anything to track your gait analysis because, presumably you're going to get up out of that chair today and walk a little bit. So, yeah, but you have to make it as simple as possible. Another thing that's really scared me is I woke up one day and saw a headline that says Amazon hires, I won't mention his name, but one of the most well-renowned physical therapists to do their movement assessment for Halo, which was their wearable. I'm like, man, these engineers are way smarter than us, and this guy knows the body better than anybody else. So I'm in trouble again. And he put together 5 movements, and the intent was for those users, the Halo users, to do a screen once a month. And those screens, I mean, they were awesome, and they get more data than what we're providing. But it didn't last very long because no one did it.
Well, and the Halo is wound down, right?
Well, that too, yeah. So that, that went away. But when you have, Google pop up and Amazon pop up as on the potential competitor side, that was a little frightening. And we do have a fair number of competitors, but a lot of them are doing, multiple screens and certainly not pulling in what I think is critical, because we're not doing everything on the musculoskeletal, is pairing it with some of that other data.
So you've gone niche and you've made it simple, which is really key, frankly, you've made it human accessible. Is what it sounds like.
Yeah, that was our goal. The number of times that we've been asked, will we do a second screen? And I've said never, but I've given the caveat of, give me a business case to do it. and I'll do it. So let's say we added another screen and we went from getting 80% of your information about how you move to 95% of the information we need. But every 1,000 people that do it, we're probably now going to have 250 people that do it. So we're we just want to make it more manageable. And look, if you get an absolutely awful score on ours, yeah, maybe you want to do a manual assessment or something more to dive into some of that other information. But look, if you're messed up on what we do, it just fix what's going on, because we measure some important stuff. And the overhead squat is a very difficult movement because, just squatting is not going to tell you a whole lot, but you put your hands over your head and try and squat. And if your ankle flexibility is bad, you are going to lean so far forward. Your shoulders are going to come so far forward. We're going to notice a lot. We have people that say, "Oh, you're measuring my squat depth and I want to get down to 90 degrees when I'm only getting 80. I'm going to beat my score and I'm going to get down and I'm going to, squat further." And you can, but now you're going to get compromised because you're going to lean further forward. And so, again, it just gets so much information from, kind of to your point. We give a lot. You can take 3 or 4 things from what we're doing, and I can tell you exactly what to do, and you will move better if you do your corrective exercises.
I'm really curious to do this squat.
I wanted to stand up and do one right now. See Warren's going off camera. No,
So put your hands over your head and let's see. Squat normally to depth as feels comfortable. Oh, okay. I don't want you to put your arms. I want you to keep your arms straight
up, like in the
yeah. So just squat 3 times. So yeah. It looks like you're getting pretty decent depth. All right. So that's all it is our screen is just that. And so from just that, we can measure your shoulder mobility, your ankle mobility, how far you're squatting. Yeah. Your knee flexion. We can look at whether so what you don't want is your knees to cave a little bit inward, because that is not a stable position. And so we're also measuring whether you're activating your shoulders. We can look at, obviously, your forward torso lean. And now we're seeing how symmetric you are on the left and right side. I could tell from that your squat depth was pretty decent. I would have no clue at your symmetry just from the human eye. No idea.
What about when the scan occurs, footwear, no footwear? Like, is there a difference? Does it notice these things? I mean, I imagine that it would.
That doesn't matter as much unless you're wearing certain footwear. So we had a woman that was very dressed up at a conference. She had, big heels. And she's like, "Hey, I want to do the assessment." And so she did it. She took her shoes off and did an assessment. I'm like, "Hey, I'm super interested. Why don't you put those back on and do it and see how it compares?" And
that is interesting.
So I guess this is a leading question, but guess where she scored better?
With the shoes on.
Yes, and you know why? Because
she wears them often.
No, it's not that. It's because she had support at her ankle. So what we're seeing a lot and what's going to affect your squat is, so you'll see a lot of people that or if you're at, someone doing back squats a lot of time, when I used to do some CrossFit, they're like, "All right, we're moving to squats, change your shoes, get your lifters."
Right. Yeah.
Having more support there is gonna it's gonna help your depth. And if you have bad ankle flexibility or bad dorsiflexion, it's gonna cause you to, when you're squatting, to lean forward. And so it not only improved her score, it improved big time, because once you have good ankle flexibility, which if you're going to pick one thing that works, pick your ankle, because it affects the entire kinetic chain. And her score improved. We score on a 1 to 100, and just a norm-based scoring. So, 80% of people are between 40 and 60. And she was low 50s and went into the 70s with her heels.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
So what we like is just don't be changing if you're wearing your lifters, and then however you're screening, do it the same each time.
Right. That makes sense. That way you get consistent measurements over time. That makes the most sense.
Yeah. And if you don't have much of a heel lift in your shoes, you're not going to see any difference.
One of the things that I see, and this is me, seeing an optimistic future with AI in the healthcare sphere, is seeing how all of this data, like you're saying, with the asymmetry and symmetry, nutrition, sleep, exercise, all of this coming together and giving us such a better picture of what an individual health metric is, or an individual health plan is, because we're all different we live in different environments, and we live in different settings, we eat different things, and seeing that. Are you seeing that with your connections in healthcare? Are you seeing other things coalescing to create that individual health plan?
Yeah, not yet, very much. But so let's take a glucose monitor. I think those are very interesting because you can see, okay, we hear, blackberries are a great fruit to have because it has a low glycemic index. Well, put a glucose monitor on and see how much that spikes your sugar, because it's you're all different. Everyone's different. And when people come and say, "Oh man, this keto diet's great for me, you should go do it." Well, how the hell do you know? I mean, so you can't. There's no one size fits all for prescription. But I will tell you, on our side, kind of just coming back to your dorsiflexion, your bad ankle flexibility will affect the rest of you. I don't care who you are. So it's not as much as everyone's different. If someone has good or bad ankle flexibility, doesn't really affect that person as much. Yes, it will. But where it's going, besides what we're doing, is the integration of this kind of biometric biomechanics stuff. Is I think you're going to see. So there's something called a force plate, which is very interesting because I did our screen with standing on a force plate, and what that could do would see how much pressure I'm putting on my left side versus my right side. So it's looking at asymmetry in a little different way. And, post Achilles tear, I am putting 60% of the pressure on my right side. So no one's going to get any sort of scalability by having to buy an expensive force plate. No one's even heard of a force plate. I don't know. Very few people have even heard of a force plate. And if they have no idea what the hell it does. So now, but that's very good information that gives you. So I think what we're going to see a smart shoe that does the same thing, because that's valuable information. I think we're going to be getting different types of information. Wearables.
More wearables.
I mean, well, wearables, 10 years ago, I don't know how prevalent it was. I mean, with Oura and Whoop are the ones that came along and really, really made this mainstream in a lot of ways. But I think there's, and there are things right now. There's patches you can put or sensors into your wearables to track a lot. I mean, there's so much being done at the elite level. So, if you ever watch, so if like in an NFL game, they'll have, this person returned the kick at 21.1 mile an hour speed, and in a soccer match, they've done, 6.7 miles running in the first 70 minutes of the match. I mean, just all kinds of stuff. And we're getting, there's a lot of expensive equipment, and we're seeing a lot of data from elite athletes, but that just doesn't translate to,
your normal
like
average everyday person. Yeah.
And I think that's going to become, more mainstream. And I don't know if it'll necessarily be, and this is just an example of something that I think will be interesting. It's not like you're going to have to get a special shoe necessarily. I think it's going to kind of be like an orthotic thing. where you can just add it to your, I just think there's a lot of that coming, and which will lead to the problem that you guys have brought up. That's now it's more information.
Well, one of the questions I have for you is, you mentioned in 2017 that you've been doing this. How long have you been doing it? 2017, is that?
We started in 2016, and we started with so you guys know the Microsoft Kinect camera that's in the Xbox. That's all that was available to look at that could I look at your body and identify joints. So we used the Microsoft Kinect and had a separate Dell touchscreen monitor and all housed within this kiosk. And it was great, but that's certainly not something where you can reach somebody remotely. And the costs were pretty high. So unfortunately, the technology in your smart devices wasn't good enough at that point. And it's still a challenge. I mean, a lot of it is, okay, there's the front camera that's a 2D color camera. That's a lot for facial recognition. Now, the back of the phone in your iPhone has, certainly the newer ones, a LiDAR camera, which is 3D. And so, kind of coming back to what we wanted to accomplish was we want you to be able to self-assess. Well, it's very difficult. It's impossible to self-assess if you're looking at the back of the camera. And so what we did was we took that front camera and did something called inverse kinematics, and basically had an algorithm so that we can see all three planes of motion from that front camera. So the evolution was we were able to evolve to being able to use the iPad, iPhone, Android device, so it's on the consumer side, or you can reach the consumer away from the four walls.
So one of my follow-ups, though, is we know that generative AI started before ChatGPT and those kinds of things, right? So has the recent explosion in AI made it easier to analyze and crunch this data? What impact has that kind of had for you and your app?
It scared me is what it's done. All this valuable information we were providing, I was like, wait a minute, can others do it? No, it will help us when we're pulling in the wearable data, because there will be so much, but right now it's not very, it just hasn't been very difficult. But once we bring in wearables and all of that data, we couldn't do it without AI. Just absolutely couldn't, because we're going to be giving personalized recommendations based on, instead of 5 or 6 key data points, so much more. We wouldn't be able to do it without AI.
Right. I remember talking about wearables when they were first initiated. The healthcare organization that I worked with, they gave Fitbits to basically all the staff, and the marketing team, we, as competitive people that we are, we all were running around with those things and tracking various bits of data. And one staff meeting, I remember my boss, she wanted to know what everybody's sleep habits were. And so for the week, we all wore them to sleep and whatnot, and brought them back. And then it was really interesting, and maybe you have some insight in this, but it showed that, like, all the guys, great sleep, according to the Fitbit. All the women, terrible sleep. We were like, what's going on with you people at night? What are you guys stressing out? And so it was entertaining. We had a good laugh and a good lark at a staff meeting. But you talk about sleep and flexibility, and now I'm wondering, were they stressed out? Were they not as flexible as the guys were? What does that, based on gender? Are you seeing any differences there as well?
No, we're not. But so that becomes, so I think you just brought up an interesting point, and an excellent one is, so now we're just seeing one piece of data. So I don't know, let's look at everything else. Maybe it is the flexibility. I don't know. Maybe it is any number of other data. Now, maybe it's your asymmetry. Who knows? But we want to get to the bottom line of why the females were sleeping worse. That, I don't know. Maybe they just had newborns and they were the ones stuck with getting up all night. Who knows? But an interesting story about Fitbit is way off topic, but so there was a show on ESPN, talk show, Mike and Mike in the morning, and Mike Golick, really animated guy, and he would just like always move his arms and this, and very animated. And he, at the end of one show, he's like, well, I got up, I came to work, I sat down in this chair, and I haven't moved, and yet this thing says I've done 5,000 steps. Because of all the movement it was thinking. So you also have to be careful with the accuracy. And I'm not going to go into the ones that didn't get great data, but Garmin is the most accurate.
Of the smart wearables today?
Yes.
More so than Apple Watch or some kind of Samsung device?
I mean, they're measuring different things, but the latest I saw, so in things like your HRV and sleep. So
interesting.
Good to know.
Garmin, you said.
It's also very expensive, but there's kind of a good correlation between.
That's how those things tend to work.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't need AI to figure that one out, did we?
Not at all. Andrew, it's been a pleasure to have you. We normally round this out at an hour. We want to be respectful of your time. Before we sign off, how should people follow you, learn more about you, connect with you? What would you want any listeners or viewers to know about you and Physmodo moving forward?
Yeah, I just love if people could just reach out on LinkedIn. It's easiest. Our social media presence is not what it needs to be, so maybe by the time you upload this, it will be. But LinkedIn, please.
LinkedIn. All right, good.
We'll make sure we put that in the
video description.
Yeah. Well, thanks, guy. And I've enjoyed, like I said, I've listened to one of your podcasts and think, as AI becomes a critical piece of our business, I'm learning a lot. So thanks for what you guys do.
Thank you, AI Explorers. We had an excellent episode speaking with Andrew and learning from him all about Physmodo. If you liked what you heard, please like and subscribe, follow, and check back in for our next podcast episode. Thank you as always, and have a great day.